I'm gonna show you.
Recover from such a crisis. Well, let's go ahead and just start. The American people have been rightfully angry for what happened on September 11th, 2001 for 20 full years in just a few short days, when thousands of innocent civilians were brutally massacred on commercial airliners in the Twin Towers and the surrounding areas, at the Pentagon, and a field in Pennsylvania. First responders bravely trying to save lives. There is reason.
Nee. This, what I'm about to do, is what makes life just worth living. Ready? Too bad you can't witness what I'm about to witness. I'm breathing air made by the gods. I mean, a full pack of Chips Ahoy cookies. Oh my god. Subnautica and Chips Ahoy goes real good together. And these things, once you put them in your mouth, they like dissolve. They crumple up in I know, like, not like little not like regular chunks, but like into real tiny chunks. Oh.
To be upset when thousands of Americans have been sent to the Middle East to serve their country and are killed, and those that came back have had their backs turned on them by their country and their government. There's reason to be angry. When your entire way of life has been quickly disrupted and ultimately changed due to something that happened this long ago, you have a reason to be angry. The truth of the matter is, the United States government failed its people with the September 11th terrorist attacks. There are many conspiracies that, terrorists were never genuinely responsible for it, that President Bush ordered the attacks, the United States allowed it to happen, so much more, but I really don't want to spend this video digging through these conspiracies. I want to talk more about the fact that the United States government blatantly failed the nation on that day. Not only did the United States government have an extreme level, honestly, of actionable intel that such terrorist attacks could be planned and take place, but it also had been intel they'd received years prior to the terror attacks even happening. In December of 1998, the Clinton administration was rocked by reports from the CIA's counter-terrorist center that potential terrorist flight hijackings were being prepared by Al-Qaeda, the group who later committed the 9/11 attacks. This was nearly 3 years before the actual attacks ever even occurred. In April of 2001, the leader of an enemy of the Taliban, the Northern Alliance, shared a warning from their leader to European Parliament in Belgium that included a request for humanitarian aid, but also included a stark warning that intel suggested there would be a large-scale terrorist attack that could take place immediately on the United States' own soil. Tragically, Ahmad Shah Massoud, the leader of the Northern Alliance, was later assassinated by Al-Qaeda terrorists just 2 days before the 9/11 attacks, and only months after he warned the Europeans of what was to happen next. President George Bush was told on May 1st, 2001 that a U.S.-based terrorist group was planning an attack. In a daily brief given to President Bush on June 29, 2001, it was suggested that, quote, an interview that month with a Middle Eastern journalist in which bin Laden aides warned of a coming attack, as well as competitive pressures that the terrorist leader was feeling, given the number of Islamists that were being recruited for the separatist Russian region of Chechnya. The CIA went on to claim, basically, that these attacks were imminent and would have, quote, dramatic consequences. Obviously, the attacks would happen just a few short months later, and they would have some of the most dramatic consequences of any event in global history. On July 10th, 2001, the CIA's director and counterterrorism chiefs met with the current National Security Advisor Condoleezza Rice.
Hey Neil, with 3% cash back in drugstores from Chase Freedom Unlimited, you're always earning. I got these great shampoos you should try.
Yeah, you look good.
This meeting detailed intelligence that proved Al-Qaeda was planning to attack the United States imminently. Condoleezza Rice, instead of listening to these concerns and taking action, instead prioritized other issues that were facing her desk and ignored this advice from one of the most important investigative branches in the world. Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld believed that the information was essentially false information fed to the United States, meant to see how military leaders would respond in such a scenario to kind of scout them out, and also decided not to act on it. On August 6, 2001, yet again at a daily briefing for the president titled, quote, Bin Laden determined to strike in U.S., it was described that Bin Laden and his Al-Qaeda operatives were immediately mobilizing a terrorist attack in the United States, which included FBI information that suggested the patterns of activity were consistent with planning for hijacking aircraft. Condoleezza Rice, who once again saw this information, replied to this by saying that it was, quote, not prompted by any specific threat information, and that it, quote, did not raise the possibility that terrorists might use planes as missiles. Unfortunately, as we all know now, the terrorists that these people were warned about for years did use planes as missiles. Nearly 36 days later, airliners were used as missiles by 19 hijackers to kill 2,996 Americans and injure a further 25,000. Government agencies had suggested that this was planned, imminent, and real for years before the attacks. Yet, of course, nobody listened, nobody reacted, and frankly, nobody cared. Until it did happen. Until the United States faced the bloodiest terror attack in world history, it faced the longest conflict that it had ever been involved in. Americans were, and rightfully have been, mad. Many, however, are completely ignorant to the failures and wrongdoings of its government that, had they never happened, may have prevented this entire timeline in global history from even happening. The U.S. economy was damaged by $3 trillion. Two icons of the United States in the Twin Towers were completely destroyed after collapsing in the attacks.
Mesmer.
Things could never really be the same. America united after the 9/11 attacks in a way that may never truly happen ever again. American humanitarian efforts swelled. People across the nation donated blood or traveled to New York to help the rescue efforts. Money was raised for the victims of the attack, and it appeared that behind the might of the United States, America was about to kick some ass like never before. Throughout the tragedies of what's happened since then, the average American has not been given the proper answers as to what the government is going to do to actually make any of these situations better in any way. Sure, Bush gave his speech and rallied the country behind him, but by the time that his presidency came to a halt, he had an approval rating of 25%, one of the lowest since 1937. 20 years later, it's hard to imagine that most Americans feel any form of pride about what was done in Afghanistan and such. A serious failure of the country has occurred throughout this whole process, and as a result, trillions of dollars in taxpayer dollars have essentially gone to waste, and families now have to cope with the loss or permanent change of many of their loved ones that served in the conflict. Even soldiers that weren't killed, the post-traumatic stress disorders that may face them may make them feel as if they're social outcasts, lead to potential homelessnesses, may lead to damaged and broken families that struggle, if not outright fail to heal, and tragic suicides that should never be as prominent as they are. People who've served this country have been failed. Afghanistan veterans are coming home and suffering daily for their service. Much of this is been, I guess, in a rush of patriotism following what happened to our country, but the want to defend their families and loved ones in their country from a threat across the world has permanently scarred an obscene amount of young American men and women. Through all of the questions, the lies, even the truths, the war, the blood, everything, Americans have suffered from the conflict in Afghanistan. A country that once thought it would win this war easily and prove the greatness of America on a global scale is watching in horror as evacuation efforts have resulted in several servicemen being brutally murdered in suicide bombings by Islamic State affiliates. Afghan civilians would rather cling to the side of American aircrafts and face certain death than to face the leadership of the Taliban, which reports suggest have systemically gone from door to door to find and execute Afghans who have worked with or cooperated with the United States during the country's occupation. As of the writing of this part of this video, Americans still remain in the country, and a genuine crisis has unfolded in the Middle East, trying to wrap up the end of another crisis. There have been worries that another imminent terror attack will happen at any minute, according to the United States government. President Joe Biden has been on the hot seat for the crisis in Afghanistan rightfully so. During the unfolding of the crisis as the Taliban took full control of Afghanistan, President Joe Biden went on a long vacation to his home in Wilmington, Delaware, where he initially refused to answer media questions and to make any sort of statement on the crisis that was endangering American civilians, soldiers, and allies. Much of the country has since felt that Joe Biden's handling of the situation was poor. According to Rasmussen,
Get back. God, it's so sad. Oh my God! Sorry, my headphones have low battery. They're garbage. These things barely freaking charge. We should have kicked their asses. How did we get floored? How did we have to evacuate? I know that, just because we're a big country, we never always win. But look at the size of Afghanistan compared to the United States. Even freaking, like, what? Even, like, the India's army could probably kick their ass.
34% of Americans currently believe that the country is headed in the right direction, and nearly 1 in 10 Biden voters have expressed regret for their vote in the 2020 election. 39% of likely United States voters actually believe that Biden is currently running the country, while 51% of likely United States voters believe that the presidential decisions for Joe Biden are being determined and planned by other people on his behalf. Support for Joe Biden has wavered, and quickly. It's no surprise why recently this clip of Joe Biden at a press conference came out where he openly admitted that a roster had been selected for him to call on media questions, starting with an NBC reporter.
Ladies and gentlemen, they gave me a list here. The first person I was instructed to call on was Kelly O'Donnell of NBC.
Like, usually video games are really bad at, like, simulating the ocean and all that stuff, but this game, man, like how the water, you can kind of hear what's it called, the echoes of the, Cyclops system. Like, I love when you stop it. Ready? Then people might be wondering, why don't I just go into accessories? Oh. Ready? I've been wondering, why am I heading off to this random direction? Well, actually, there's a very good reason. Left! No, we're not gonna go to like the northern part of this island, because if we do, there's Reapers over there. They'll kill me. Even in this big sub, they'll 10-shot it. Subnautica, scan some trees, speedrunners, no. Gel sack? Get some of the seeds, that way we can take home.
Hear that? That's another reason. Then we should be able to synthesize it. Ready? Seek fluid intake. Really? Rip. I think I know a place where you can get some. Vlad. You are the best captain on the planet. I am not even squitting. The best quote in this game ever. I should have eaten one of the gel sacks. Okay. No, it's weird, but hey. These things never spoil. Spoiler alert. This is called the Quarantine Enforcement Platform. When I first came here, I thought it looked like a tower. However, when I saw videos of it, it's a giant ass gun. That's how we got here. This thing right here takes a really big. It has a real big role in this game. There are so many. Oh yeah, I'm about to say I really want ion batteries, but we can't get that until we go like deep down into the game. Oh yeah, this place has a problem with loading issues. Ion cube. It's approximately 3 then. However, if you get, I'm just gonna say a spoiler alert, when you get to the end of the game, there are unlimited amounts of cubes. This can make a really good base because see here, you can actually put your Cyclops in here. If you're really lucky, you can actually cram 2 Cyclops in here. But one, once you get like 2, it's kind of like cramped. I want a status rifle. That's the final cube here. There's the portal. God, I hate going to these places. This sprinting really hurts your freaking fingers. There's Doomsday device. So look, this device contains the potential energy to destroy an entire planet along with most of the solar system. Fortunately, it has malfunctioned. Alien rifle. It's actually taken from a game. Forgot what it's called, but I like this rifle. I forget what that. Natural Selection. Yeah, that's what the gun is from. It's a game called Natural Selection. Apparently, I've heard that, and I'm like, oh my god, that's interesting. So they took the same gun from Natural Selection and put it into this game. I've never played Natural Selection 1 or 2, but it does have Altera, and it is the Subnautica universe. I have to keep 2 hands on it because my freaking this shit gives me carpal tunnel. Click, click. might want to look away. I don't want to do anything. Not a megaton. Basically, that core has enough energy right there to power 1/10 of the entire United States. That core contains a ton of power. Ow. Oh! I think next we should really consider raiding the Aurora. I really want to fix the Aurora soon because if you know, you can actually fix it and the radiation goes away.
President of the United States is being openly instructed on who he can call on. Do people not see a problem with this? I mean, I surely do. Much of Biden's blame has been directed on the now collapsed Afghanistan government and armed forces, essentially noting that their military collapsed under the pressure of the Taliban and literally fled cities and gave up surrendering if confronted. An obscene and military equipment left for the Afghan forces were abandoned to be claimed by the Taliban. The president of Afghanistan, Ashraf Ghani, fled the country without even telling U.S. officials or top Afghan leadership, fearing the bloodshed that would likely ensue against him and his people after the Taliban overtook the presidential palace of the nation. Biden is not inherently wrong in blaming the collapse of Afghanistan on the government that Afghanistan was controlled by. It's just intentionally misleading people on the amount of failure indirectly responsible against the United States. This Afghan government was not built by itself. Sure, the Afghan people may have voted for their president and whatnot, but don't get it twisted. It was a complete packaged product that had been propped up by the United States and their armed coalitions. The United States rebuilt the national government in Afghanistan and largely supplied, funded, and trained its national security forces. The system that the U.S. designed flat out failed. So yes, while Afghanistan's prior government holds responsibility for a lot of what happened, the United States also holds that blame for creating a government and military that was so weak-footed that it would collapse so fast. Especially considering they spent trillions of dollars doing this and spent 2 decades as well doing so. America would like for the world to believe that this Afghan collapse wasn't due to their propping up of this government that failed so hard, but it genuinely was. I find it hard to not blame our government for this issue. It's been very public that corruption was rife within the Afghan government and military. Most of the major officials in the American projects were extremely corrupt people. Afghanistan had led the war in its nation after NATO and the U.S. handed them control in 2014, meaning that for going on 7 years now, Afghanistan has largely determined its future in this conflict. The support, however, was honestly all that really kept Afghanistan free. A major issue within Afghanistan's military was the inability to keep true loyalty. Many members of the Afghan forces were loyal to 2 separate parties. Either they were loyal to their country, they were loyal to the idea of a unified Afghanistan, that wasn't led by the Taliban, that wasn't led by terrorists, that was a democracy that had its own determination, that built its own freedom, that was going to lead its own future. Or they were loyal to local warlords and terrorists and people who basically were bullies and leaders of gangs. Many of the soldiers enlisted in these Afghan security forces didn't even exist. They were called ghost soldiers, and they were simply names on payrolls so that Afghan military leaders could still collect a paycheck for overseeing something that didn't exist. And let's be honest, who do you think paid for this? The United States largely did. In fact, the United States was obligated to pay $4 billion per year to maintain the Afghan forces that really don't
Shell Rotella engine oils are designed with your needs in mind. Our oils will help you go further, so you can get more out of every trip. To learn more about how Shell Rotella can help you go further, visit Rotella.com.
And we're back. Back to letting out your inner super fan and nailing the ultimate victory dance.
don't even exist anymore. Also, as of the end of 2020, the U.S. was announced to have spent $88.3 billion reconstructing Afghanistan's government security forces, which was nearly 62% of U.S. reconstruction funding. Most of these Afghan soldiers were poorly trained and ill-equipped. Reports suggest that they either didn't understand how to use the United States' technology, or they just simply weren't taught well enough how to use it, and were simply rushed onto a battlefield with no loyalty to be churned into a war machine because the United States was there. The truth is, the United States did not build a functioning government and security force in Afghanistan. They built corrupt puppet states rife with corruption and uncertain loyalties. The military largely was not loyal to the new Afghan society and government. They were loyal to whoever was nearby. The leaders of this Afghan government cowered away and collapsed. They fled the country when they found it convenient. When they thought that it was their neck on the line, when they were the next to be killed by the Taliban, they fled. And guess what? They didn't tell the Americans. They didn't even tell their own people. They straight up left. The American experiment failed miserably. Afghanistan fell. And of course, we have seen the aftermath. But that leads us, I guess, into a massive question, right? Who is to blame for all of this? What Americans are at fault for this? I mean, it's an American experiment. What Americans are at fault for this? Of course, people are to blame in America for the mishandling of this situation, for the trillions of taxpayer dollars wasted, for the disturbing amount of life lost, for all of it. However, there isn't one singular person. It's an entire government. It would be easy to just say, oh, Biden did it all, right? Or, oh, Trump did it all, or it's all Obama's fault. But realistically, that's just not the case. There's a lot of people to blame for this. And the failures in the United States are a calculated failure that hundreds, if not thousands, of American government officials actively took place in. There are several notable government figures spanning 2 decades. There are 4 separate presidents and their administrations. They are military leaders. They are politicians, Democrat and Republican. Of course, they're not regular everyday people. They're not your neighbor. They're not your brother or your cousin. The people in power over the course of all of this are really the ones to blame. Security branches in the upper tier of government from the late 1990s to the 2020s are responsible. From the people who ignored the repeated warnings before September 11th, to the presidents who have shifted blame off of themselves while still feeding this nightmare tax dollars and fresh Americans to bleed out for a country that honestly wouldn't piss on them if they were on fire, and to officials in office who have turned the other cheek while the military-industrial complex profited off of the carnage. Starting with President George W. Bush, many presidents have been to blame. I mean, yes, Bush did rally great support from the nation, sure. However, these master goals that he set out under his administration and military officials did not succeed. 20 years later, not entirely his fault, the Taliban once again now control Afghanistan. However, 4 times throughout 2001 was this attack predicted, if not outright told to be happening in some capacity, sometimes directly to the president himself, yet no control over the situation was presented. wars were started in the Middle East with disastrous effects on the American nation. George Bush demanded the Taliban to give up the al-Qaeda operatives who were responsible for 9/11 instead of sheltering them, a demand that did go ignored by the Taliban and later led to the invasion of Afghanistan. But by the time that George Bush left office, 30,000 U.S. troops were staged in Afghanistan in a now years-long conflict that was preparing to defend against a Taliban resurgence and was getting ready to get passed on to a new presidency. President Barack Obama was really not much better with his handling of the situations that he inherited starting in 2009. Facing pressure from military officials, Obama greenlighted the deployment of tens of thousands more American troops into Afghanistan over the following years. He initially planned to pull out of Afghanistan entirely throughout 2011, but obviously this would not happen at all during the Obama presidency, and actually still remains one of the major failures of the Obama administration to deliver on promises made to the American people. One of the major wins during the Obama administration that America still totes as a big victory throughout this whole thing, however, was the Pakistan Navy SEAL raid that led to the assassination of the mastermind of 9/11, Osama bin Laden. In May 2011, America accomplished one of the primary goals under Obama's direct order made on April 29th. They got him. Osama bin Laden was killed from a raid that started in Afghanistan. And while conspiracies still swirl that Osama bin Laden was never really killed by the Obama administration and he's still alive in some capacity, the official story is that he was actually buried at sea according to Islamic traditions and was given a proper burial at sea, I believe off the side of a helicopter. So essentially Osama got a couple bullets put inside of him and was turned into shark meat. However, this was, of course, not the end of what happened in Afghanistan. This was not the end of the war. Of course, the mastermind of 9/11 went down, but the Taliban still existed. Al-Qaeda still existed. ISIS was emerging. Terrorism was still a threat. Obama did announce a plan that would eventually lead to the full American withdrawal by the time that he led office, and he did hand over major combat operation control to Afghanistan on December 31st, 2014. However, things changed throughout the presidency over the years. The situation in Afghanistan was deemed too risky for the Americans to fully leave, and Obama ended his presidency failing to fully end the conflict that he promised to and left Donald Trump with the war and 10,000 soldiers in Afghanistan. Now, President Trump kind of took the gloves off in a pretty major way, but also had his shortcomings as president as well. Shortly after taking office, the United States dropped the mother of all bombs, aka the Moab, on Islamic State cave systems in Afghanistan, marking only the first time that the Moab was ever used in combat. According to media outlets, it supposedly killed dozens of enemy fighters and crippled the capacities of the Islamic State in the region. In 2019, under the Trump administration, the United States dropped a record 7,423 bombs on Afghanistan. At the same time, Trump and his administration also helped negotiate the withdrawal deal with the Taliban that is widely spoken of today. This pretty much was done without the Afghan government, which angered them severely, but in February 2020, a deal was struck that would trade American withdrawal for Taliban cuts in violence.
Oh shit. Ow, that didn't go right. Shit! Eek! Find the tiniest little cave that can't get me. And that's how you lose a Reaper, folks. I'm not gonna claim to be the best player at the game, but I damn well know what I'm doing.
And collapse. They fled the country when they found it convenient. When they thought that it was their neck on the line, when they were the next to be killed by the Taliban, they fled. And guess what? They didn't tell the Americans. They didn't even tell their own people. They straight up left. The American experiment failed miserably. Afghanistan fell. And of course, we have seen the aftermath. But that leads us, I guess, into a massive question over the following years. He initially planned to pull out of Afghanistan entirely throughout 2011, but obviously this would not happen at all during the Obama presidency, and actually still remains one of the major failures of the Obama administration to deliver on promises made to the American people. One of the major wins during the Obama administration that America still totes as a big victory throughout this whole thing, however, was the Pakistan Navy SEAL raid that led to the assassination of the mastermind of 9/11, Osama bin Laden. In May 2011, America accomplished one of the primary goals under Obama's direct order made on April 29th. They got it. Osama bin Laden was killed from me now recording this, was supposedly fully completed ahead of schedule, and the United States has completed the full evacuation and is officially out of Afghanistan. The truth is, 4 presidencies have mishandled this situation. It's not to be blamed on any one individual. This is a group effort, and it was a group failure. Many things could have been handled better across the board, and the failure that we've seen will permanently, I think, mar the image of the United States on a global scale. Our largest allies watched our efforts die in vain, with thousands of dead soldiers and trillions spent for the same outcome to arrive 2 decades later. Our enemies are celebrating their victory, hanging on.
When you make more gifts and wows. You make more statements, keepsakes, and messes. When you make more, you get rewarded. Visit Michaels.com/rewards to find out how to start earning today. Michaels, made by you.
Get focused fast with Nature's Bounty New Brain Focus. Our fast
My son is a deadly laser.
Onto our military equipment, abandoned by our Afghan security force project. Estimates suggest that the United States spent $2.26 trillion in Afghanistan throughout the duration.
Hey, I'm gonna take a break, guys. Good crap. Bye.